All right. Well, welcome back, everybody, those of you who are here. We're going to give folks a few minutes to come over before we start our next presentation with Carl Webster. And to do that, we're going to go back and do a few trivia questions. So if you are ready over in the team chat area, make sure you got that chat window ready and you're ready to type in the answers, because the first person with the correct answer on this question will get a new CUGC cup like you see on the screen. So if you're ready, let's go. First question. What goes up and down but still remains in the same place? I'll accept one of two answers. What goes up and down but still remains in the same place? Wow.
There's some good answers in there.
Those of you who are putting your answers in, you seem to be putting them in the Q&A window. You're supposed to put them in the chat window. Well, they're all going in the Q&A window anyway. Open group. Chat. I had the wrong chat window open. That was my fault. All right, let me go look at there. Oh, we got a lot of answers in here.
Retirement.
All right, so the acceptable answers are stairs or mountains. And it looks like Kevin K would be the winner. Kevin K picked staircase. I guess that's what we wanted on that question. So if you would send an email to Katie, and we'll put, okay, great. She just put her email into the chat window there as well. Send her an email and she'll get a cup off to you. All right, second question. What can go through glass without breaking it? What can go through glass without breaking it? Everyone's got the right answer. So Jesse H., you are our winner. Answer is light. Light can go through glass without breaking it. All right, we got one last question before Carl starts up. Here we go. Which month do people sleep the least? Which month do people sleep the least? Trenton, I hope your answer was to the previous question. Oh, I'm seeing all sorts of answers in here, but we'll give the answer to James S., who guessed correctly that the month is February, because it's got the fewest number of days. So of course you'd sleep the least amount that month. All right, thanks for playing our game here. We'll have more questions throughout the rest of the day. And of course, we got our prizes at the end of the day. But right now, we're getting set up for my friend and fellow CTP fellow, tuba player extraordinaire, Carl Webster. He's going to talk to us all about PowerShell. So Carl, take it away.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Tim. Those were some good trivia questions. The answers were, some really good answers there. So I'm Carl Webster. I prefer to be called Webster. Today we're going to be talking about PowerShell scripts. And I want to thank the 4 user groups that make up the Northeast Excel for asking me to come and speak. I appreciate that. Here's a little bit about myself. Hey, new today, IGEL or Eagle announced a new community award, IGEL Insider, and I'm one of the lucky recipients to be in the inaugural class of that new community award. So it's pretty hard to find me on the internet. My website's carlwebster.com. Email is carlwebster.com. Twitter is Carl Webster. Facebook's Carl Webster. LinkedIn is Carl Webster. I'm very hard to find on the internet. I will be asking 3 trivia questions during the presentation. For those that win, email me, webster@carlwebster.com, in order to get you a really nice prize, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. All right, so our agenda, we're going to talk about the current scripts and files. I'm going to introduce 2 new scripts for this event, give you some tips for creating scripts, answer questions on what do I use for my scripting, how do I get ideas, and how long does it take to update a script. All right, documentation scripts. Right now, there are 24 documentation scripts. And here is the first trivia question. So get ready to answer in the group chat, not the Q&A, the group chat. What I want to know, out of these 24 documentation scripts, now listen to the entire question, what was the first documentation script written? If you answer correctly, I'm going to send you a $25 Amazon gift card. And you can also email Katie and get you one of those CUGC cups. So what was the first documentation script written? A lot of good guesses there. Ha! OS2 collection. Patrick C., you are correct. It was XenApp 5 2003. Someone, Jesse H., you just did XenApp, but you didn't say which version of XenApp. It was actually XenApp 5 for 2003. That was the very first documentation script written. All right. So now, Patrick C., you can't answer this one. Here's the second one. What was the first documentation script released on my website? The first documentation script released on my website. What script was that? Not getting, all right, we're getting in there. All right, Kevin K., you got it. XenApp 6 was the first documentation script released on my website. XenApp 5 came first, written, then XenApp 6, then XenApp 6.5, and then because of the recommendation, suggestion, pushing, shoving by Jari and Gibson, I released XenApp 6 documentation script first. All right, last trivia question. This one should be easy if you keep up with my website. What is the newest documentation script that was released on my website? The newest release on my site. Ooh, not getting many guesses on that one. The newest documentation script released on my site. Wow, only one correct answer so far. And I hope I pronounced your name right. Andre P. You got it. Parallels Remote Application Server was just released last week. All right. Thanks for playing. That was fun. So you'll see some of these scripts have an asterisk beside their name. That means they're not scripts I wrote. I maintained them, and I have contributed a lot of code to them, but they came from members of the community, like Application Delivery Controller, Configuration Manager, the Netscaler Old and Mass, Nutanix, let's see, SMS Passcode, Storefront, the VMware vSphere, and Zen Mobile. Those all came from the community. And these are all documentation scripts available for free on my website. Just go to carlwebster.com/downloads, and you can have access to these scripts. They're free for both personal and professional and commercial use. We also have some miscellaneous scripts. And these are scripts, they don't document anything. They go out and they find things, or they create things, or they help you fix things. And again, the ones with an asterisk come from the community. And you'll see some that have V1 and V2. The V1s were scripts I wrote specifically for XenApp 6.5 and PowerShell 2. The V2 scripts are the same scripts, but they require PowerShell v3, and they're just there for Active Directory, where the V1 scripts only work for XenApp 6.5. The V2 scripts work for anything as long as you have PowerShell 3. And here are some more miscellaneous scripts. The scripts just keep coming and coming. And you see numbers 43 and 44, new script 1 and new script 2. Those are the two scripts that I will introduce to you today and release today for you in honor of this XL event. We also have some miscellaneous files, just various files, most of them submitted by the community. One of my favorites is the Citrix policy settings, because Citrix had stopped maintaining that old Excel file of all the policy settings. And so, along with I think 7 other members from the community, we sat down and documented every single policy setting, whether it was for the product or an AD specific setting, and created a massive spreadsheet. That thing took like a month to create. And then Citrix got tired of all the emails I was sending them, that they had so many errors in their policy settings, that Citrix, I believe, starting with 7.15 or 7.16, they now maintain this. They provide a CSV file and a Windows help file now with all the policy settings. So thank you for doing that, Citrix, because maintaining that was a tedious, laborious job. Didn't mind doing it, but I'm glad I don't have to do it anymore. I'm glad Citrix now does it. All right, so how many lines of PowerShell? I had posted on all the various social media stuff. Guess how many lines of PowerShell I have written or helped maintain. So at the Midwest XL event in November of 2017 held at the Harley-Davidson Museum, I was curious because I absolutely don't, I don't keep track. Like, I never kept track of downloads until Jim Moyle made me keep track of downloads. I didn't keep track of how many lines of PowerShell until I just got curious for this event because people were curious, what's all in all this PowerShell stuff? So for the Midwest XL November 2017, there were 30 PowerShell files with 206,839 lines of PowerShell that I wrote or helped maintain for some people. Now let's go on to now in 2020. There are now 54 PowerShell files available. So it just keeps growing, and you'll see in here at the bottom left and the top right, new script 1, new script 2. So the new scripts are in the line count. I want to, it's a lot of stuff to go through, but now, what's the total? How many lines of PowerShell in 2020? 298,213 lines of PowerShell. I had guesses from as low as 12,000. Man, I've got several scripts that have more than 12,000 lines, all the way up to 4.5 billion lines of PowerShell. I want to give a shout out to my friend at Citrix, Joe Nord, for providing me with a utility that he specifically updated for PowerShell to help me with this. And we were within just a few lines. I mean, probably less than 10 lines difference in the total count. But Joe helped me come out with this. So who is the winner? Arnoud Payne, you got it. You guessed 268,170. So you were only like 30,000 lines off. But I do have a friend, GP. She was mathematically the closest. I believe she guessed like 305,000. So mathematically, she's the closest. But she went over. So she couldn't win the $25 gift card. So I don't know if Arnaud is here. Let's see. Someone asked a question here. Can we get an updated version for Zen Desktop 5? Nah. Carl, where's the pet? If you hadn't heard, Sir Simon passed away last October 11th. So my buddy, my lab partner, died. I'm sorry. I'm already choking up. I miss my bud. I do have a picture of him right back there in case you can't see it. So Simon's not here. Let's see. Someone asked any scripts that can be used for API. No, I don't. Mainly because most of the API stuff is not documented by Citrix, so can't get it. Can't get it. All right. So now on to the new scripts. The first script I want to introduce is get DNS info. Now you can go out on the internet and you're going to find lots of scripts to help you gather either NIC information or DNS information. I have issues with those scripts. Mainly, they make too many assumptions and they don't do any error checking. And you don't know whether the data they return is actually accurate because they do no error checking. So to me, the scripts are not that good. So the scripts, as most of you know from any of the scripts that I release to the community, there is lots of error checking. And we'll cover that why when we talk about tips for creating scripts and stuff. I'll explain why. So what this script does, it goes out, you feed it a list of computers, whether, from a list on the command line, or reading an input, or using something like get AD computer. There are 12 examples in the help text for get DNS info on how to use this script. And it will go out there and it looks at all the scripts, looks at all the computers that you have passed to it. So it could be workstations, it could be servers, it could be both, whatever. We only process computers that have a static IP address, because why are we concerned about DNS information on computers that get DHCP information? Go to the DHCP server and you can fix it there if something is wrong with DNS. We enter all this information into a dnsinfo.csv file, so you can pull it up into Excel and do whatever data manipulation you want. And then I also create a computer names.txt file that contains a list of all the computers that were processed. One of the things about that is if you pass it all the computers in Active Directory, say you do get-AD computer-filter asterisk and you pipe it to this script, it's going to process every computer object in Active Directory, whether they're Windows or not, and it does not know if that computer object is old, stale, dead, no longer exists, isn't in DNS. It's just going to process it, but it's actually going to put that information in that computer names.txt file for you, and it will say that, hey, I didn't find this computer in DNS, or hey, this computer's not online, or we were unable to reach that. And then that way you could actually use this, process all the computers, computer objects in Active Directory, and it'll give you a pretty good list of the junk you got sitting out in Active Directory. So here's an example. Unfortunately, this doesn't give me a zoom thing, but this screenshot will be up on my website as soon as the roundtable's over, and there's a much better picture of this. This is, don't know if you can read it. I'm doing get AD computer-filter. We're operating system like Windows. So I just want just the Windows. I don't care about your storage devices. I don't care about vCenter. I don't care about your ESXi host that maybe you've registered and Active Directory DNS. I don't care about any of that. Get everything that just has Windows in its operating system, pass it, select just the name property, because that's all we care about, sort it by name, so when you see it processing on the screen, you actually know where you are instead of just a random list of computer names. And then it goes out, and then it will generate this file here. Now you say, well, big deal. Well, at a customer site I ran this at, you see the bottom 5 down here are all the RAS server 2, SQL 1, SQL 2, x8665. Those all reside on vSphere. And you can see that vSphere uses the same beginning for the MAC address, the 005056. Well, when I ran this for a customer, everything was on VMware. Well, what we found out is, I guess someone got kind of sneaky or tricky, but they were changing the MAC addresses to things like dead beef dead, dead beef bad, things like that. They were making names out of the MAC addresses, because as long as it's a valid hexadecimal thing, you can go out and enter whatever you want for the MAC address. And we were able to go in there and see that someone had gone in there and played games with the MAC addresses, and then they had to go in there and fix that. You'll also see that, like for SQL 1, it has 2 IP addresses. Normally that's a concern. I know it's not, because I had just set up a failover cluster for SQL 2019 so that I could test setting up always-on availability groups to test something for a customer, so I know those 2 IP addresses are valid. The second script, set the DNS info. Oh, someone's got a question here. Is there a Power Template script to build new scripts? Not really. I have a script, and it's so out of date, it's probably useless now, called Script Template. It's actually in my GitHub repository. That basically shows you how you could take that template and create your own documentation scripts. But there's not a Power template to go out there and automatically generate a documentation script. These documentation scripts are a lot of manual effort. All right, back to the second script, set DNS info. Again, you'll find lots of scripts on the internet, but they make some bad decisions, some bad assumptions, don't do any error checking. And so what this script does is it will go out and it reconfigures the DNS servers on the NICs, on the computers that you specify, only for those that have IP enabled, which means they're using IPv4, and DHCP is disabled. And we're only looking for computers that use a static IP address, because obviously if you want to change DNS information on computers that are using DHCP, just do that on the DHCP server or your DHCP appliance. And then I create a text file, DNS change status.txt, to let you know what we processed. And then here is one. So some of the scripts that I have found actually will just take whatever you put on there and just says, put this on the next property. Well, I don't know about you, but you can't put a server name as either primary or secondary DNS. You can't use a NetBIOS name. You can't use a fully qualified domain name. You can only use an IP address. And so I do a lot of error checking, a lot of testing. And so here I'm passing 2 invalid domain controllers. I only have to test the first one to see it was invalid. If the first one was valid, I'll check the second or third, fourth, however many you put, and I'll test to make sure that all of them are actually valid. The other thing we look for is here, you see I'm using labfs.labaddomain.com as my DNS server. LabFS is my file server. It is actually a valid server. So why am I showing it as invalid? It's not a DNS server. It doesn't have Microsoft DNS running on it. There's no port 53 on it. So obviously I'm not going to let you find the IP address for LabFS and just put that on all your computers. Now I'm going to keep you from shooting yourself in the foot. And then here we validate IP addresses, because you don't want invalid IP addresses for your DNS servers on your computers. That could be a resume generating event if you did that. If you put the invalid primary, secondary, and possibly tertiary DNS servers on all your computers that use static IP addresses, guess what's going to happen the next time they go to log in? They're not going to be able to find a login server, and no one's going to be able to log in. And unfortunately, I can't use the Zoom. I don't have Zoom here. This screenshot, just the very top portion, will be on my website. I'm just showing here, I'm getting AD computer with a filter of all computers where the operating system has window in its name and the operating system has server in its name. That way we can get Windows Server 2000, Server 2000, Windows Server 2003, any permutation like that. Anything that has Windows or window and server in the operating system property in Active Directory. And then I want to go through and say, hey, but don't process my domain controllers. I don't want to. Yes, Microsoft DNS servers. Oh, you're talking about for the DNS server parameter? I don't care as long as it will do like a telnet test for port 53, then you're golden. But James, if you want to get this and test it and let me know if it doesn't work, I'll work with you and see if we can get the script to work with InfoBlocks, but it should. If the name is valid and it responds on port 53, it should work. So I don't want to change my domain controllers, because domain controllers, if you've ever attended any of my AD sessions or AD webinars, domain controllers have specific settings for primary, secondary, and tertiary DNS, and those should never be fixed by a utility like this. You want to only do computers, or in this case servers, that are not domain controllers. The other thing I don't do, like some of the others do, is if you enter a list of IP addresses, like if you did say 192.168.1.1 and 172.16.1.1 and 10.10.1.1, other scripts go out there and sort that list. And then therefore your primary DNS would be 10.10.1.1, secondary would be 172.16.1.1, tertiary would be 192.168.1.1, which is not what you wanted because you actually entered them in a specific order. I leave the order that you enter specific because, like in my case, 192.168.1.202 is my PDC emulator. That's what I want everything pointing to for primary DNS, and then my second domain controller for DNS server as secondary. So I won't touch whatever you enter. And then here I'm showing I actually enter the FQDNs. It's the same thing. I'm going to process all computers that have window and server in the operating system property that are not domain controllers. I'm going to pass lab DC2 and lab DC1. I go out there and resolve those to IP addresses because you cannot put FQDNs for primary and secondary DNS servers. You can only enter IP addresses. I go out there, get the IP addresses. I don't change the order of anything, and then off we go. And then I don't know, you probably can't see it, but I processed all these computers in my lab, and it took like just under 1.4 seconds to process everything in my lab. And then once we've run, we go through and I give you this file that shows that everything is successfully updated. All right, Tim, how are we doing on time?
Doing pretty good, Carl. You got about 12 minutes left.
Okay, good. All right, so let's get you started with PowerShell. First thing to do, man, just get started. If you want a book, I recommend Learn PowerShell Scripting in a Month of Lunches from Manning Press. You can get it from Manning Press. It's also now available on Amazon. And if you go to Concentrated Don on Twitter, he's one of the authors of this book, or he may be the author of the book. And they've got like a 20, 30, 40% off code. So if you go Twitter, look up Concentrated Don on Twitter and get that coupon code. You can get this book. It just walks you through very short exercises that you can do during lunch just to get up to speed on PowerShell. And just pick something simple, like I want to get a list of all the delivery groups in Studio. Something simple. And you're not working on your PhD in computer science. You're not trying to impress anyone. You're not trying to get a Nobel Prize in, convoluted computer programming. Keep it simple, because months later you may have to go back, and if you don't understand what you wrote, it's not simple enough. But as Einstein said, keep it as simple as possible, but no simpler. You also want to be thinking about who is going to come behind you and is going to look at your code and possibly have to maintain it and figure out how it works so they can make it work for them or maybe work better in their environment. First thing, make your code work. Just don't worry about anything fancy. Does it work? Just output onto the console. Just make it work. Once you have made it work, verify the data is correct. I don't care how fancy the code is. If the data is not correct, it's useless. Once you have made it work and you have verified all the data is accurate, now you can work on making it pretty. The problem I see is that a lot of people spend so much time on trying to make their output pretty, but the data is not correct. Who cares about pretty output if the data is inaccurate? The script in the output is useless. Make no assumptions. This is the problem I found in like the other get DNS info, set DNS info scripts, is they make so many assumptions. They just assume you're a domain admin. They just assume that you may run it on a domain controller. They may assume you're going to run it from elevation. They're going to assume that the information you have passed to it to configure on that network card is absolutely correct. They do no error checking. So don't make assumptions. Another thing about making assumptions is don't use magic numbers. If you say, my magic number equals 16, at least put a comment in there that explains what 16 is. 16 is the number of rows, 16 is the number of columns, 16 is the max number of stuff your boss wants to look at, because you could come back 9 months later and you'll sit there for 2 hours trying to figure out what the heck was 16. Why did I put 16 in there? Test with different versions of Windows, test with different versions of PowerShell. This bit me in the butt last Thursday and Friday as we were doing final testing for the get DNS and set DNS information. It was working perfect in the lab. It was working perfect in Michael B. Smith's lab. I then had to use it for a customer. Neither script worked. Neither script would run. Come to find out, we were both testing on the latest version of Server 2019 and Windows 10 2004 fully patched. Microsoft broke something or did something, fixed something, broke something in PowerShell, because what worked in Server 29 and Windows 10 2004 version of PowerShell 5.1. whatever did not work in Server 2016 unpatched. Broke, would not work. We had to go in there and actually do different things in those scripts, and then also found out it broke the massive rewrite we're doing of the Active Directory script, version 3, which we're in the final testing on, and hopefully that'll be released maybe next week. Massive, major rewrite on that script, taking us 2 years to rewrite that script. So always test with different versions of Windows and different versions of PowerShell, because what works in PowerShell 3 may not work in PowerShell 4, may not work in PowerShell 5, may not work in PowerShell 5.1. I don't know anything about 6 or 7 yet. All right, so here are some miscellaneous questions that I normally get. What tool do you use for scripting? First one, I do 99% of what I do in Notepad++. Then when I'm puzzled because something is not working, I'll use ICE to allow me to step through the code and see what I've done wrong, and it's usually a typo on a variable name as why something is not working. Then when I've got something where the script just won't even load or run at all, then I use Visual Studio Code to help me track down what I've got wrong, and sometimes it's a copy and paste error and I've got an extra curly brace in there. Google is your friend, but always give credit. When you borrow or steal someone else's code, always give credit. If you've looked at any of my scripts, all my scripts, if I have found how to do something on the internet, the link to it is always in the code that I have used. Always give credit. My main PowerShell mentor, Michael B. Smith, He's the guy that he's the co-author of the 2 new scripts because he's the one that did a lot of the heavy lifting on all the WMI stuff and how to get the information to make sure everything worked regardless of the operating system or version of Windows. And then Mr. Super Duper Genius himself, Guy Leach. When I am really stumped with something and I can't find it in Google and I can't figure it out, and Michael B. Smith may not be available because he is one busy person, then I'll send a query to Super Duper Genius, the guy who eats regex expressions for breakfast, Guy Leach. How do I get ideas for scripts? From people like you, from the community, and from actually going out on customer sites, doing projects. That's where a lot of the V1, V2 scripts, like the get home folder errors, get folder redirection errors, get GPO time, get GPO processing, all those scripts came about from actually doing consulting work and having to generate a script to help fix different issues. How long does it take to update a script? Michael B. Smith and I have been working on the Active Directory script for 2 years. To create the Parallels RAS script took me 2.5 years, but that was some issues with their PowerShell. When Citrix releases a new version of CVAD, it may take me a week or 2 to go through and update, that documentation script. When they release a new version of PVS, I got to build it, got to test it, anything new, and then add it into the script. It could take hours, it could take days, it could take weeks, or in the case of the Active Directory, 2 years for a complete rewrite of the script. All right, let's see. Is a set format for coding? I don't understand that question, Stefan, right?
Okay, we got a few minutes left. If you have any questions, now's the best time to get them into that Q&A window.
Yeah, there's one. Is a set format for coding? I don't understand that question. Do you understand it, Tim? Do I have a set format?
No, I did not.
Okay, if you're talking about do I have a set format for coding, yes, I do. If you look at any of my scripts, tabs are 4 spaces. The curly braces and stuff are on their own line. Some people don't like that. Hey, it's my code. Is that what you're asking about, Stefan? Let's see, James Smith. Or PowerShell Studio. Oh, I'll share it and let you know we can go from there. Or PowerShell Studio. I've never used PowerShell Studio, so I don't know. Good point on assumptions. How do you personally handle how much error checking, handling you add to scripts, handle issues as you think of or encounter issues? Okay. So what Michael B. Smith taught me to do was you do something and then you immediately, there are 3 error conditions. It totally failed. It succeeded but returned nothing. It succeeded and returned something. So I used to do, it succeeded, let's go do something. It succeeded, but nothing was returned. Let's handle that. Then at the very end, it failed. Let's handle that. Well, in order to get to the failure thing, and some of my scripts, you may have to go down a couple of thousand lines of code. So as we're redoing things, I'm putting the failure up at the very top. If it failed, let them know right up front it failed. It succeeded, but nothing was returned. Like I can do after you install and configure Studio, there are no machine catalogs, there are no delivery groups, there's no policies. Does your stuff work from a greenfield install where nothing exists? Test for those.
All right. Well, thank you, Carl. I'm going to cut you off because you do have your upcoming session where people can continue to ask those questions.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right.
This is the end of our time period here. We're going to go into, if you go back to the lobby, and then you can select the appropriate room that you want to go into for the discussions. Of course, we have 5 different rooms there. Carl will be in the scripts room. You can find him there. We've got a networking room, a career advancement room, an app protection room. That'll be Martin again. And back to work, New York strategy as well with Terry. So come join us in one of those rooms, and we'll see you back for the closing later on at 4:10.
Oh, yeah. And hey, Patrick, Kevin, and Andre, make sure you email me so I can get you your $25 Amazon card.